Hey, this is Mike, Seder 42 Vinyl. I'm going to do another video today with Roger. We are going to do our full episode 1 of Amplified Assignments. Yes, it's such a great name for a show. We're going to talk about 2 albums today. We discussed this in our episode 0, where we're going to have one person suggest an album to the other person, and then they're going to have to listen to it for about 2 weeks. At least 2 songs. They're going to have to really give a really good opinion on those particular songs. Yeah, we'll just discuss those albums. I'll talk about the album, why I picked it for Roger, and Roger will talk about the album that he picked for me, the band, whatever, and the reasons and kind of why we like that album. And we've been checking each other's discogs to make sure that we don't have the album. I'll have Roger start. The first album we're going to talk about is Ayreon, and this is Into the Electric Castle. This is an album that came out in 1998. The album is 144 minutes long. It's a huge epic story, progressive rock, think Rush, Deep Purple, 70s influences, modern influences. It's a very modern sounding album, but when you listen to it, there's instrumentation in there that is just ripped right out of either a Deep Purple album or a Pink Floyd album. You can hear Arjun's inspirations throughout the whole album, but I think that he really does also make the music his own. He has a unique sound, I think, as well. A little bit of history about Arjun. He was in a band called Vengeance in the 80s, so he's kind of an 80s rocker from back then. After that, he didn't really have anything going for him. He was out of bands, and he wanted to kind of try something new and give one more shot at, music. And he wrote an album called The Final Experiment, and it was a rock opera. It's something that he always wanted to do, music that he's really loved, and he kind of was just going to put everything into it, and it was like a make it or break it type thing. The album did really well, or at least well enough for him to continue making music under the Ayreon name. And that album also, Final Experiment, was another progressive rock, progressive metal album with a huge story, a rock opera. Then he just kept doing them, and he is making music to this day. The idea behind this album, and this is one of my favorite albums of all time, but the idea behind this album is that not only is it a concept album with a huge story, but there's a bunch of different singers that sing all the different parts for the characters that he created in the story that he wrote. So he's always been able to get people from, kind of bigger bands, smaller bands, just singers that he loves and likes to sing for him. He's even had James LaBrie sing for one of his albums, so he even got, really top tier guys to sing for him that really respect his music and respect his sound. Yeah, this is one of my favorite bands of all time, one of my favorite albums of all time. And I forced Roger to listen to 144 minutes of music. And specifically, there's 2 songs that I think I asked him to listen to. Cross the Rainbow Bridge is on end of side 3 of the 6 sides of the album. And then Garden of Emotions. But then right after Garden of Emotions is Valley of the Queens, which I think is a very beautiful song. There are songs and music out there that I listen to that really hit me emotionally, almost every time I listen to it, And Valley of the Queens is one of those songs where, it's just the melody of it, and it's a really emotional song. And yeah, it's one of those songs that makes me love the album and love Arjun as an artist and a songwriter. If you can hit, your emotions with just a melody, not even necessarily the lyrics, but just, the melody of something sometimes can really hit you. And that's one of those songs that's really, really great on the album. And it's really short, and it's just, kind of a really plain song, but it just has that great melody in it.
My journey's over. I'm standing on the edge and close my eyes to this world of lies. My will is broken.
Yeah, those are the songs, and this is the album that I forced Roger to listen to over the past couple weeks, and he is now going to talk about his experience of having to listen to this album. And I know this was a huge task, 144-minute album. This was a giant ask. This I can't promise this won't happen again, but I will try to give you more reasonable music, album links to listen to in the future. But I'm interested into hearing how you felt about one of my most favorite albums of all time, The
So
Electric
first of all,
Castle.
I'm just only going to regard that particular aspect with this, and please keep this in the edit, my pause as long as possible. Bruh.
Okay.
Yeah, that was a long fucking album. So my preconceived notions, I think that's a good thing I want to talk about in this exchange with us is just like, and that could be like, I had no idea what you're talking about. That could be, so I had none. But my preconceived notions, I have definitely heard you talk about this band before. I may have listened to a track or two out of curiosity in the past. I don't particularly recall. I assumed I was going to hate this. I really did. Like, I thought this was just going to be some sort of like just symphonic kind of just like over the top indulgent bullshit that would drive me absolutely crazy. Like, I was like, ugh. And then even when you told me in the preface how long it was, I was like, oh my gosh. So that was my thought going into it. Because it's so long, my listening experience was I think Amazon Music breaks it up into two halves.
Yeah.
So I listened to disc one day, and I was kind of checking what song I was on and paying more attention in the songs that you had said. The next day, I listened to disc two, doing the same thing. And then I had taken notes about the songs in general. And then I gave it maybe a week. And then I did pretty much the exact same thing again. I don't hate it. There's a lot about it I like. There are going to be a lot of negative things I say, but like I didn't hate it. You said there's six sides, but I'm just going to
Yeah.
call it side one and side two because first of all, you said this is like a musical. 100% agree. And like musicals, I think there's two acts in it. And I think Across the Rainbow Bridge is the last song of Act One. And then you go into Act Two afterwards. And you mentioned Jesus Christ Superstar. The audience may not know. I'm super fan of it. Like I'm a super, super, super fan of that musical. I'm not a huge, huge musical dude, but I've seen enough. I've seen Hamilton a bunch of times. I've seen Rent a bunch of times. I like musicals. And I always think that like I always had this theory that I've kept to myself that the best song of a musical is the closing song of Act One.
Yeah.
It's really like the inflection point of a musical. And I think for the ones I like, that has always held true. I will just cut to say that Across the Rainbow Bridge, probably the best song on the album. In the last few weeks, I've been humming it and singing the chorus around my house. Like I can't help it.
Beyond these distant skies, our fortress lies. Across the rainbow bridge, we'll span the sea of tears and conquer all our fears. Forsake this morning field and drop your shield. Across the rainbow bridge, run to the other side where all our dreams abide.
My critiques, and this is going to go to the critiques of the whole album. I really hate all the narration parts. If I'm looking at this as a musical, a good musical doesn't need that. You give the exposition through song. You don't have a narrator talking over. And as a listening experience for me, it really just kind of like drag it down. Like my notes of this from Across the Rainbow Bridge are, and I'll be honest, I'll be like, the fucking narration is what it starts with. And then the next, I'm like, more exposition nonsense.
Right.
And then I'm like, nice intro. And then I'm like, man, I really like this first singer. Very Jesus Christ Superstar. And then I'm like, man, this chorus is fucking rocking. And then I go, so much padding with the exposition. And then I end it with good song, catchy chorus. This could be a tight 4-minute song.
Yeah.
So that's my notes on that song. So I think, the first side of it, I was just like, I was ready for it to be over. Like, I
Yeah.
would have been happy if that would have been the end. I almost felt like the second half of it was a chore for me because it didn't add a ton to it that the first half didn't already add. Other than like one song I liked a lot. But, Garden of Emotions, again, it just like my notes, like the narration, so much of it, the whoever played the hippie character.
That's
I thought that
actually Arjun.
Okay, I thought that character was kind of cool, but it also kind of just made me giggle every time because it seemed like such a caricature because it was kind of this weird Bowie, Syd Barrett, Donovan kind of mashup of just being very over the top. And like the intro was so long, and then that song, it just was too much for me. There were moments where I thought it was cool. I'm like, long ass intro. I don't like this groovy ass rhythm. And then I'm like, man, but it's back and forth stuff between the two characters.
Yeah.
Like that is when this album hits hard. Like because it gives me that musical vibe. It gives me that Jesus Christ Superstar vibe where it's very theatrical and it's like Jesus and Judas arguing with each other and they're like, no, fuck you, fuck you. It's just this really kind of great stuff.
Take up arms and follow me. Hey, who are you to take a lead? I will keep you off from harm. So what kind of God do you think you are? A warrior is what I am. No, I'm a wolf and you were but a lamb. If you doubt my force, you live no more. You will end your war upon my sword. And voices in the
Rare bird sounding keyboards, not long enough. So that early 70s prog, which is a good influence in this album.
Yeah.
Like the Egyptian woman has a nice voice. It fades out nice, but here's my final notes. The Egyptian woman has a really nice voice. This song really fades out nice, but what the fuck? That song was a big old mess. Several good ideas, should be much shorter. So here's my notes after that. The Castle Hall sucks. Is what I have in that. I'm like, next song too, man, this is a really low point in the album. It's dragging. And then my last notes are Two Gates. Wow, I really like this song a lot. And that sounded like Nightingale to me. Like that song, Two Gates, totally sounded like Nightingale. And I was like, this song rips, and I like that song a lot.
I challenge death to meet me at this gate. I challenge Odin to pronounce my fate. And if I thrive, I've overcome this land. But if I fail, I'll die a worthy man. Open the gate, we're now on our own. Enter the gate to your destiny. Will it be fortune or fate? The truth shall be known. Enter the gate to your destiny.
Overall, I would say I was surprised that I liked this. I don't know if I would ever listen to it again. Maybe a track here or there. I might ask to hear Across the Rainbow Bridge again. I may ask for a track here or there. I don't think I would ever listen to it in its entirety. I will say I was minorly surprised. I would give it a somewhat thumbs up to
Okay.
it. You surprised me a little bit, and that's kind of cool. I did not think I would like this at all. The fact that I came out of here going like, that was cool. I know you love this. I kind of get it. So I'm curious what you think of what I just said.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you brought up valid points. The narration, I would agree. I think this album, he really wanted to do that as a thing. So there's definitely more of that in this album. And one interesting thing is when he did the album live, he never thought that he'd be able to bring this stuff, live. He's like, there's no way I'm going to be able to get all these musicians. I mean, literally there's like 40 to 50 people that have to, perform this, with all the musicians and then all the singers. And then all these singers are in big bands, they have their own stuff to do. And they got the guy who plays Q, what's his name in Star Trek?
John Delancey.
Yes. They got him to do all the narration for all the Electric Castle stuff. So everything that you're sort of poo-pooing.
I mean, come on, dog. Why you gotta do that to me? You know who you're talking to, right?
Live.
You're talking to a dude who listens to Star Trek podcasts.
Now listen well and understand the import of this game I've planned. We are the forever. The stewardship of the universe is in our care. Wisdom and passion we nurture everywhere. Of these humans you're about to see, who best embodies these qualities? The first 5 humans have had their say, and now 2 more will join the fray. Watch the barbarian. He's so uptight. And the hippie, out of sight.
So I don't know. I thought maybe you'd think that would be kind of cool, but maybe
That is
I
kind of
don't know.
cool.
So
That is
yeah,
cool.
so he's a fan of all that stuff. Like he's a huge sci-fi nerd, fantasy nerd. He's inspired by all this stuff to kind of create his own little story in music. I would not disagree that the songs maybe are bloated and that there is a lot of extra stuff in there. And I would agree also that the second half of the album is not as good as the first half. Most of my favorite songs of this album are in the first half. But I think that there are just moments in these albums, like in the songs, like there is I think it's during Isis and Osiris, the first song after the initial intro, where there's this Hammond keyboard part that just goes crazy. It has this really weird time signature on it, and it's like Deep Purple,
Is that the
Yeah, he just came in there and started, yeah,
because there is a
exactly.
keyboard rhythm in my head from that album. I don't know if it's from that song.
And then there is where he has this theme in the song where it's like this melody and it's played by like 4 or 5 different instruments all in a
Okay.
row. And it is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's so cool.
That's
I
a good
just
part.
love those moments.
Yeah.
And they're honestly, some of my favorite parts are those musical moments, not even the singing or the melodies and stuff, but some of those musical moments are just really exciting to listen to just over and over again, kind of. So, well, cool. I'm glad that you enjoyed it and that you
Yeah.
didn't completely like, oh, this just isn't for me at all. And
Yeah.
I knew it was a huge task for not having ever listened to an Ayreon album. Everything you said makes sense, right, to me. So yeah, I think it's awesome that you enjoyed it. So that is the first album that we're going to talk about. That was Roger's amplified assignment, was to listen
Yeah.
to Ayreon, and he has given a very good report back. So now we're going to go on to the second album, and this is an album that Roger suggested to me, and I will let you tell me about the album that you picked for me.
So you got the Manilla Road record. My framing isn't as good as you, but the Manilla Road record, Crystal Logic,
Yep.
is what you got. This was a band that I'm gonna guess based on our kind of private conversation earlier, don't remember this. We had never heard when we were young. You and I have talked about the magazine Metal Maniacs before and how that was a big influence for us. And at some point, how they would just put like a picture, they would just have sections where it was just a picture of a band. And that was just it. It was like kind of, and there was this picture, and we had never heard of this band. And it was a picture of this band called Manilla Road. And we could not stop laughing. Now, granted, we're young idiots, and we had like a certain kind of idea of what metal dudes were supposed to look like. At that point, the death metal thing was getting in. Every guy had long hair in their eyes and were standing in front of an upside down cross or in a graveyard looking like really grim at you. And this picture is neither. And we laughed nonstop. And I'm not defending that at all. Like, but hey, we were kids, so I don't, whatever.
Right.
But so this was a band, over the years, I had maybe occasionally heard a blurb about them. I met some dudes, they were talking about them nonstop. They convinced me to go see them. It was 2017. It was at a bar in Detroit called the Corktown Tavern. There was hardly anybody there, and the show was incredible. Like, it was so good. I was like, I'm gonna go be a fan of this band right now. And so that's when I got into them. That's, my favorite album of theirs is Crystal Logic. But, a little bit about Manilla Road. They were formed in, Wichita, Kansas, of all places, in 1977. And their first several years, they were just more prog rock, space rock. Nobody was really listening to it. They put out an album. They put out a second album. Didn't really do anything. I'm, hopefully not speaking way out of turn here. But then finally, their third album, Crystal Logic, was the album that really defined their classic sound. And then in the 80s, they were putting out like an album like every year on real small labels. And then in 1990, I think 90 or 91, they broke up.
Mm.
The main guy, Mark Shelton, the guy who writes all the songs, plays guitar, sings, he formed a new band, the Circus Maximus, and recorded this album. It's very different sounding. I don't think it's really that good, but the label that he was signed to at the time decided to release it as a Manilla Road album and changed. And instead of like the band being called the Circus Maximus, the album was called the Circus Maximus and the band was called Manilla Road. That ended his recording career for a while. I think he was pretty bummed after that. And then 2000, he started recording again with a new lineup. And then with the new lineup, he brought in a second singer. A second singer kind of, they split the duties 50-50, and the old songs, like Mark would sing like the classic parts or maybe the chorus, and the other dude would sing the verses. The newer songs and the albums that came out after that, it would just kind of go back and forth. But I think he was kind of tired of singing from what I read and just kind of wanted to take the weight off his shoulders, but also understood that people still wanted to hear him because, he has a very unique vocal style. We can talk about that later, but he has a very unique style, so that they kept recording after that. Like, every year or two, another album was coming out over and over and over again. And these albums are so consistent. Even if you go to like a site like Metal Archives and you look at the list and you just look at the average review, all of them are like consistently high. Like, this is a guy who really never put a bad album out. A champion of heavy metal. I said I saw him in 2017. In 2018, he passed away at the age of 60. It was about a week before they were going to play Wacken in Germany.
Wow.
And he played another festival the night before, died of a heart attack that was caused by severe dehydration and heat exposure. So a little side note here, everybody, hydrate, drink water, y'all. It's very important. These are super, super, super important things. My record shelf, I have 15 Manilla Road records. I like them all. Some are better than others. And I think it's so funny that like that picture that we saw when we were teenagers made us laugh that band off the planet. Turned out to be one of my like favorite bands, maybe the only last 8 years, but 8 or 9 years, but man, it's just kind of funny to me. So I knew before you say preconceived notions, you had told me before that you had heard Necropolis.
Right.
And so at least that gave me a hope that like I knew that like, going to Mark's vocals, that might be the nasaliest song of all of his nasally songs. And the fact that you had heard that song and liked it, I was like, well, he won't hate the vocals, is what I was like right away. Like,
yeah.
But no, so I am done. That's my bit on Manilla Road. Crystal Logic is I there's not a record I don't recommend by them. This is kind of my start here record. I don't even know if it's the best, but it's definitely my start here record with them for sure.
All right, so Manilla Road, Crystal Logic. This is your pick for me, and I'll spoil right now. I do like the album. Like you said, I had heard Necropolis before, that song. Like, because when I started collecting vinyl again in 2016, there was so much music that I wasn't familiar with, but I knew I wanted to get more familiar with. And like the early 80s, mid 80s, new wave British heavy metal stuff was something that I really wanted to start buying a lot of albums from, and even stuff from the 70s. Like those are kind of the things that I was like curious about, and also obviously I wanted to get all the stuff that, we like already, and that we, for nostalgia reasons and stuff like that. But I think I listened to something like a playlist on Spotify or something that had a bunch of new wave of British heavy metal or early 80s stuff, and Necropolis came up. And like you said, back in the day, we probably never even listened to a song from Manilla Road. So even we saw a picture of that band, we did laugh probably. I don't disagree
We
with
most definitely
that at
laughed.
all. But yeah, I can almost guarantee we hadn't even heard a song, because obviously we had no way to hear it, right? Unless it was played on Headbangers Ball or we bought the album, we weren't hearing a song. Knowing how that type of music, even though Manilla Road is a US band, which I didn't know until, we discussed it, in a way, they're kind of part of that US power metal scene, in a way, that early US power metal scene. So I was getting interested in that stuff, and I had heard Necropolis, and like you said, that song and those vocals are interesting, but really what hooked me on that song is the chorus. I mean, it is just immediately an earworm, kind of,
It's the melody,
the way,
right?
yeah, the melody, the way he sings it. And I was trying to
agreed.
think of any other song that uses the word necropolis like that in a chorus. I couldn't think of one.
It's so
song.
goofy, but it works.
I couldn't think of one song. So I
Yeah.
think it's unique.
No way.
Yeah, it's totally unique for that.
Through the jungle by the river Styx, I've journeyed long and far this day, lurking shadows in the parapets will never make me turn away. Darkened city veiled in crimson mist, entombed in time without decay. Never thought it would be like this. It feels like I'm living inside a dream, but my mind tells me I'm lost in the crowd. Lost in the crowd. Lost in the crowd. Lost in the crowd.
To touch on the vocals, it's funny because honestly, the album itself, it sounds very typical of that sound of like traditional heavy metal, early traditional heavy metal from the 80s, new wave of British heavy metal. I don't know if you'd agree or disagree, but a lot of that stuff is interchangeable or sounds very similar to each other. But the one thing that Manilla Road has that some of those other bands, don't have is those vocals. And those are very unique to Manilla Road. And I love the vocals, honestly. I
Great.
think it's one thing
Awesome.
that stands out on the album, and the way he sings Necropolis with the, it's very high and weird. It reminds me a bit of like Geddy Lee in a way, like when because
Yeah.
Geddy Lee has
Yeah.
like really weird vocals too, but he's maybe a slightly, I don't know, I wouldn't say better, but more a little bit more traditional vocalist, maybe easier to listen to than is this Mark the Shark?
No, that's a reasonable comp.
Yeah.
Totally.
So I think that, these vocals are definitely a little bit more out there, or a little bit more extreme in that, high falsetto, what he's doing. It's still really.
And that is always one of my favorite things with rock and hard rock, is when people do shit that nobody did before.
Yeah.
And I think, by the time the 80s hit, the 70s generally covered that. And, by the time the 80s hit, it wasn't happening as often. So yeah.
Yeah, so I think that it had that sound of a traditional heavy metal, and new wave of British heavy metal, and it just, the one thing I like about and it's funny, this is going to relate to my next pick for you, but the one thing I really like about that early 80s stuff is the production value, how lo-fi it is, and how not overproduced, how even like, I'm not a musician, but I am sure that this album has tons of mistakes all over it,
Oh, yeah.
like it's probably not played
it's sloppy as
perfectly
fuck.
in time and all that stuff, but it just sounds really cool. It has that raw sound that I really like from these early 80s bands.
Seven-eyed wonder, mystery man, riding the thunder of God's command. Beyond the mountains, lost
I think there are bands that are duplicating that now or trying to do, we've talked about Haunt before we started the video. I think Haunt is a band like that where they don't overproduce, and there's other traditional heavy metal bands that are, taking that 80s sound, bringing it up to date. Even though the production values are better, they're still trying to keep it as lo-fi as they can, which I think is good. And that's one thing I really liked about the album, the vocals and the production value. Some of the faster parts of the album, with the galloping rhythms and things like that, reminded me of early Maiden, especially the first two albums. I think there's a lot of that in that, early 80s, mid 80s stuff.
I can't believe it's true. I feel stand confused. All I know is I must carry on. What makes you still fight? People in the night. Daughter of hell, I shall my enemies not now.
The Crystal Logic song, the song that you had me listen to, that one, and what's the other one? Dreams of Eschaton. And one thing that's hilarious is I was reading the lyrics, and at certain points in the lyrics, I was like, are these guys Christian? Are they like a Christian metal band?
Mark always just loved, that was his whole thing. All those albums are like good versus evil types of
Yeah.
stuff, but he most definitely, me, that would have been a red flag beyond belief. Like, no,
Definitely.
that was not a thing. He just was into that imagery.
But like I said, when I was reading the lyrics of this, I was like, this is interesting, and I actually did look up and find out, were they, are these lyrics Christian? But they were, like you said, they're more of like good versus evil and the triumph of good over evil, really. So it was kind of like, interesting. And Dreams of Eschaton, I think it's partially fantasy, but it's also has that very 80s, especially late 80s, so I think that song is a little bit about, end of the world via, nuclear annihilation. And one thing I really liked about that song is what we were talking a little bit about Ayreon is, there's a lot of melodies and musical parts that are really good, but then there's a lot of musical passages that are just really long and interesting. And at the end of that song, almost half the song is like that guitar solo at the end.
Yep.
And it's a very melodic solo.
Yep.
He keeps playing the same stuff over and over again. He'll play a crazy solo, but then he'll bring back the melody into it, and then he'll play a solo and then bring back the melody. And it kind of just fades out. It's kind of an interesting song because it's like in three parts. It has the first part where he sings all the lyrics and the melodies, but then there's that solo section, and then at the very end is the piano that kind of fades it out. So yeah, it's a really good. I like songs that I like epic songs. Obviously, Ayreon, 104-hour, 44-minute album. Epic songs are awesome. So I think that 10, 12-minute song, I kind of like songs like that have, different sections, but they still fit. Yeah, it's a really good song. I enjoyed it. So yeah, the two songs you picked, Crystal Logic, that song, and then
Cool.
that other goofy love song.
What'd you think about that song? That song's
yes.
funny, isn't it?
Or like a sex song, I guess.
Yeah.
But
It's got a hooky chorus, though.
it's got a hooky chorus. All the songs are pretty good.
I got a feel for life, girl. Hey, baby, I'm feeling free again. I never thought it'd be like this, especially with you. I never thought I'd feel like this. Now I'm in love with you. I got a peaceful sunshine.
I think the Veils of the Negative, whatever that song, that
I
might be maybe the lowest point on the album, but I think
Oh,
it's
wow.
still a good song. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
kind of like I guess it was just a mid pace and it was okay. It wasn't my favorite song on the album, but
The chorus is so amazing. I almost gave you that instead of Dreams of Eschaton. I'm glad I
maybe if I
didn't.
had listened to that one maybe a few more times, that song I guess it just wasn't as memorable as the other songs, as I'm listening to the whole album. I kept going back to what was the song? Riddle Master.
Hmm.
I think it was like I don't know, that song just reminded me of Maiden really heavily of Maiden, so I really liked that song. And Necropolis was a highlight as well. The
Oh,
Ram was
yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah. Okay, I'm looking at this. That's good. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
good song.
The
Yeah,
Ram was
yeah.
good. It had a good chorus, and that song I liked too. I don't think there was any song on here that was bad. Yeah, so I think it was a good album. I enjoyed listening to it. I'm familiar with this type of music, so it wasn't like I was trying to. I don't know. I think Ayreon was a little bit more out of your range of what you normally listen to.
Yeah.
But Manila Road was definitely in a lane. The
Yeah, for
vocals are
sure.
the only thing I think that if anybody had a problem with Manila Road, it probably would be Mark's vocals. Manila Road vocals are one thing that makes them unique. All the fantasy themes is cool as well. Yeah, and just great songwriting, really good choruses. This was an early album, 83, so it definitely has a lot of that hard rock in it still, but it does have that heavy metal in it as well. It's kind of a good mix. Yeah, I enjoyed it overall. I thought it was a good
Would you
album.
consider purchasing
Yeah, I
this
definitely
album?
would. I would look for this album and probably buy it
Cool,
for
cool.
sure.
Personally, I would say I think all of their albums are pretty consistent. I probably would just go, if possible, in order, but I would just, anything you see that's available and at a reasonable price, I'd grab it because I think they're remarkably consistent. In an ideal world, I'd just probably go in order. And I think they get much heavier after this. I think this is the most new wave of British heavy metal sound than they ever had. I think they get a
Oh,
lot.
okay.
They get
That's interesting then.
the guitar tone gets heavier after this.
Okay, I'll be curious to check some more out.
So cool, cool, cool. I'm glad you liked it. I thought you would.
Yeah.
So I think we're at the point now where we're gonna talk about next episode. So this record, I don't remember how I heard about it. I don't remember if it was a blind buy at record time. I don't remember if I saw a random review of it somewhere. It is on Twin Tone Records, a Minnesota, more indie rock kind of label that put out albums by Soul Asylum, The Replacements, Babes in Toyland.
Love Babes in Toyland.
This album was produced by Dave Pirner from Soul Asylum.
Okay,
This
interesting.
album is the self-titled and only album by
The
the Coup de Grace.
coup de grace. I've never heard of this.
The Coup de Grace.
Maybe I've heard of this. Am I even going to be able to stream this?
Yes, I checked.
Okay.
It
On
is out there.
Spotify, right?
I at least on YouTube or Amazon, so I'm assuming if it's on those, you can find it wherever you listen to things. I'm really excited about this. One of the
Here it
things
is. 1990. Okay.
1990. One of the things you and I, have talked about, one of the cool ideas about this idea of a show we're doing is not only is it trying to influence each other, but actually just randomly taking something that we really want to champion.
Right.
And 1990 was what, 35 years ago. I have been championing this album for 35 years and I feel like nobody listens to me. And I think it's so good. And I won't say anything more because I'm not going to have a ton. I'm going to have to do some hard research to give you a ton of info on this album. And I'm actually looking forward to that because
Yeah.
I feel like I need to learn more about this album. I think because of the label it was on and who produced it, people kind of thought of it as more of a genre bending album. I'm going to hard disagree and say this is a heavy metal album, mostly a thrash metal album. I think, to Dave Pirner's credit, the production I think is fucking great on this record. So I don't want to give too much up because the fact that you don't know this is super exciting to me. Because, and if like you and one other person watching this becomes a fan of this record, I will be happy because I think this is a great record. It gets mediocre to okay reviews. I don't care. So because this is a 36-minute album, I decided I was going to give you 3 songs. The first song being, I'm going to keep it simple because 2 of them are going to be the opening and closing. The first song being the opening track, Daylight Dawning. The second track being in the middle, Me, Myself, and I. And the last track, the closing track, So Be It. I think these represent the album well, but I actually think all this album is great. Every song is really cool. There's some really speed metal aspects. There's some thrash. There's a little more kind of mid-paced kind of stuff. I don't want to say too much. I'll pass the mic back.
To listen to it. All right, so my pick for you, this is going to be kind of funny in a little way, but you had mentioned to me, like, I thought you were going to pick this album. Well, I did pick this album. Interesting thing about this. Okay, so
Odyssey is the name of this album, right?
yeah, this is Horse.
Okay.
This is Odyssey. This
Yep,
is a
okay.
Swedish band. Broke up a couple years ago or a few years ago. Really sucks. They're a fantastic band. All their albums are good. This album though is their masterpiece. It's their, ultimate everything. It's a 60-minute album, 64 minutes, so there's a bit to it. If you go to my Discogs and you sort by added, this
It's
is the
number
first,
1.
Yeah, this is the first album that in my collection.
I've noted that, and that's how I was like, well, what funny story is because last week I said I think I know what it was, and I thought that you were going to pick this album.
Yeah.
And my memory of like, what was that album again? I go, it was the first album he had to Discogs, and I went to your page and started it by that. I was like, yeah, that band. So
Yep, this is the first album that I bought. I don't even remember where I heard this band first, but I just can't remember where I heard this band. And I think I was streaming or listening to, I was getting interested in bands that were doing like revival 70s stuff, like modern bands that were taking the 70s music and kind of bringing it to the 2000s and, but still have that feel, So I won't say too much, but
Okay.
I want you to pay attention to the production. And yeah, it's, 70s inspired music, bands from Sweden. I'm going to say 2 songs, but I don't know, maybe we need to change this to 3 because I think there's 3 songs that I want you to listen to as well. The opening song, Odyssey, it's so cool because like I love bands that open their albums with the most, progressive, the most long, and the most hard song to get into. Odyssey is like a 10-minute epic. It's like the space rock, really cool song. And then there's another song on here called The Night Stalker, which has a really good chorus, but it's kind of like a mid-paced song. And then they sing at least 3 songs in here in Swedish, which I think is really cool. So the last song on the album is called Timorana, and that song is sung completely in Swedish. So if you get to listen to that song multiple times, it's a more of a slower to mid-paced song. Another great melody in there. So Horizont Odyssey, this is going to be the second album that I'm going to have you listen to for our next episode.
Cool. Not surprised at all. I expected that was the exact album that I would have listened to last time. So it's funny I got it this time. I guess that wraps it up, eh?
Yeah. Like, subscribe, comment, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Be kind to each other.